You have
Great.
to when you
Oh,
start.
okay, excellent. Okay, brilliant. Okay, so welcome everyone to the first REBT Facebook seminar. Luckily, today we have got Kevin FitzMaurice from the United States. He's regarded as one of the leading REBT practitioners. He has over 40 publications published, which you can find on kevinfitzmaurice.com. Today, we're going to speak on the subject of self-esteem. So I've been reading a little bit myself in background in terms of self-esteem and the way that it's built and broken throughout life cycles. So I'll pass over to Kevin just to discuss how self-esteem is dealt with through an REBT perspective.
Well, Ellis started out as a psychoanalyst, and he was very unhappy with that because it was very slow going, and he didn't like being just a paid friend, and he wanted to do more than that. So he sought out some other avenues. He didn't find anything he liked. So he made his own, and he used ancient psychology and philosophy. He drew on spiritual traditions, even though he was an atheist. He drew on philosophy, and he came up with a whole viewpoint that has existed for a long time on how people are responsible for their life and their feelings and their thoughts, and other people in life isn't. And then he made that into a system. He actually formulated a system where that could be practically applied. So he didn't invent the ideas that REBT is based on. What he did was he coalesced them, and he created a system to use that would help people achieve those ancient ideas and principles.
Okay,
At
excellent.
first, his focus was on flexibility in thinking, but as he developed over time, it went more and more into acceptance, and finally into unconditional acceptance. And that's where he finally philosophically settled.
Okay, brilliant, excellent. And in terms of self-esteem, I mean, it can be made and broken at a very young age. I feel that people either have it or they don't. It's almost a psychological overall base of the character. So people that have got supportive parents can be built up through life, but unfortunately various life events can then affect them, whether it be a breakdown of a relationship or losing a job, that can then affect that self-esteem. I think people's ability to be able to bounce back from that or deal with that does make or break people sometimes, just with regards to whether or not they can move into new relationships or take the confidence through. So in terms of looking at those life events, I mean, how do you feel that REBT could sort of assist people from that perspective as well?
Well, REBT has a radical viewpoint. REBT looks at self-esteem as just an ego game. You're on a roller coaster of you're acceptable or you're unacceptable, you're acceptable or you're unacceptable. You have positive self-esteem one moment and negative the next. And you have to worry about what people think, and you have to worry about how you perform, and you have to demand things go well so that you look good and don't look bad. And REBT focuses a lot on demandingness, but the drive behind demandingness is the self-esteem games. I have to appear good and not appear bad. Now, that's really ego. That's really not who a human being is. So Ellis focused a lot on identity, which is a deep philosophical issue and a deep counseling issue. And he went with unconditional self-acceptance as the solution for self-esteem. If you unconditionally accept yourself, then whether you fail or make a mistake, you're still okay. The failure can be fixed, the mistake can be corrected, but you aren't damned because you did something foolish.
Perfect. Okay. And I wanted to take your viewpoint on the role of social media and self-esteem as well. So things like Facebook, Instagram, people are continuously painting a picture of their life in this perfect sense. And I think people do suffer generally now, the more we're engaged within the digital world, of making comparisons between themselves and the way that they portray themselves in the digital media. So, I mean, taking a step back from that and possibly analysing their self and their actual sort of place in life. How do you feel that possibly the techniques could assist from sort of that perspective as well?
It's the same silly problem, you know, comparing yourself with others. What are you comparing? You're comparing your behaviors, your thoughts, or your feelings, but they aren't you. The feelings you had, Stephen, when you were 12, the thoughts and the behaviors, where are they today?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
where are they today? I'm asking you a direct question. The feelings and thoughts you had when you were 12, where are they today?
They're long gone.
Yeah, but you're still here, right?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
But if you were them, then they would still be here because you're still here. See, your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors come and go, but you remain. So there has to be something in your brain that's confused when you worry about being your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, since they come and go and you don't.
Yeah, definitely. Okay.
So when you're rating yourself because somebody has a beautiful Facebook page that's better than yours, you know, that's absurd. You know, if somebody makes a better movie than you, somebody writes a better song than you, then you either learn from it or you think, well, you know, I do as good as I can, and some people do better and some people do worse. But that's not you. None of that is who you are. If you make it who you are, then you can become anxious, then you can become depressed. There's all kinds of psychological problems which people have based on their self-esteem. And if you really dig deep, self-esteem is 99% of the time at the root of the problem.
Definitely, that's it. Yeah, I mean, we've seen so many times where people go to apply for promotions or go to apply for new jobs, and then they feel that they've taken a knockback, and then that affects not only their professional lives, but also their personal lives. They'll take it home, they'll take it back to family. They deem themselves a failure, that they can't live up to their peers and their people around there. And I think we really need to eliminate that mentality in society, that people are always trying to strive and making comparisons to others, whereas everyone's on their own personal journey, and ultimately what will be really from that perspective. So
yeah, Ellis called the self-esteem the most pernicious problem in the world and in psychology because it's conditional. See, that's the problem. I am good if I do good. I am good if I feel good. I am good if I have the politically correct views. You know, that doesn't make you good or bad. Those are different than who and what you are. So Ellis focused a lot on unconditional self-acceptance and unconditional other acceptance. If you accept yourself and you accept other people, then you don't have those issues. Then you can say, oh, well, this behavior was better. I can perform better here. I can go to my coach and I can learn to hit the ball better or run faster or whatever it is I need to do. But it's not about you. If you make it about you, you're going to have ego problems, or what people generally refer to as self-esteem problems.
Definitely. And I think people get so engrossed with this within a daily basis now, it's almost something that becomes second nature. So is there anything that you could recommend in terms of people taking a step back from what they do in terms of being able to actually take a look at this and seeing whether it's not a problem? Because people are consistently flip through their Instagram page or their Facebook page and say teeth whitening or tanning or anything like that, and think that these quick fix solutions are going to go out and make wonders to their new life. Even from social status, people going out and buying a brand new car and driving around, and everyone else actually looking at them and saying, well, they're driving in a brand new Mercedes or BMW, but actually what's actually replicated from within them doesn't really approve from that perspective as well.
No, they haven't changed. And unfortunately, self-esteem is really based on superiority and inferiority. So social problems, the root of social problems is really self-esteem. Racism is really a self-esteem issue. Classism is really a self-esteem issue. Political conflicts are usually a self-esteem issue. I am better because I think better. I am better because I do better. I have a better car than you. My lawn looks better than your lawn. My wife is prettier than your wife. My dog's bigger than your dog. My truck's bigger than your truck.
Exactly.
It's insanity. You have to get beyond that. And the first thing you have to learn to do is detach. You have to detach who and what you are from everything, because yourself is not dependent on things. Yourself is not dependent on what you think. yourself will be there whether you think or not. You can be in a coma and yourself will still be there.
Exactly, yeah. And I mean, I've practiced mindfulness myself, which I know is not directly related to REBT, although there may be some correlations from there. And I found that it helps me from detach from daily life. But are there any other techniques that you could feel for the viewers that could possibly use in terms of being able to imply that detachment away from these social settings and getting out of the rat race and stopping trying to be one-upmanship and going ahead of other people sort of in the community as well?
Well, you really have to dig into it. I mean, mindfulness is soothing and comforting, and I recommend it. I practice yoga myself. I meditate myself. Those are all very helpful practices, but you really have to go into it philosophically. You really have to examine who and what you are and who and what self-esteem says you are and see the difference. And you really have to do that thoroughly. Ellis wrote a book on it. Other people have written books on it. There's many chapters available on it in different REBT books, but you really have to dig into it because you're conditioned from an early age. Children don't have this problem when they're born, but they get it younger and younger, and they start comparing earlier and earlier. And that's the unfortunate part. You have to teach people that self-esteem is either unconditional or it's a problem.
That's it. I mean, it's interesting that you say about it being undertaken at a younger age. I mean, I imagine that a child that's bullied at a younger age for having a wrong appearance or being overweight or something like that can
not
take
the
that
right sneakers. You don't have the right sneakers.
Completely, yeah. Even to that extent now. And I mean, the fact that that's now, I mean, with social media as well, the whole world's to see now. So people can take a perception of someone on 2 or 3 photos on Facebook and that's made. But I've found that some people that do come from those backgrounds and suffer that grow into better people, whereas some that sometimes go through life fairly easy in the early stages and then do take knockbacks later on at life, they sometimes find it hard to adjust to that because they're used to having a smooth ride, and then if something bad does happen to them, then it knocks their self-esteem more to an extent because it's not something that they've had to put up with through their previous life from that perspective as well.
That's an important point. You know, if you stay home in a very sanitary environment all the time and you go out, you're going to get a disease or you're going to get a bad infection, and it's really going to maybe hurt you or harm you in a serious way. But if you're exposed to those things all the time, you develop a stronger immune system and you can handle them better. It's the same with self-esteem. It's okay if somebody insults you or if somebody's mean to you. What is important is how you handle it and how you respond to it. And if you can detach from that and say, well, that's unfortunate and unpleasant, but it's not, they're not talking about me. They're perhaps projecting themselves, which is the most likely case. But in any case, it really doesn't matter, because no matter what anybody says about me, that's not who and what I am. That's just an opinion, and I am not an opinion. And you move on.
Yeah, definitely. That's it. I mean, as I said to you, in preparation for this, I don't want it to become a personal counsel service to myself, but I actually mentioned that because I had the perfect life, as it were. I had 3 children, a marriage, and then my marriage dissolved, and I got stuck in a situation where I thought I was never going to be able to rebuild that, and it's taken a couple of years and it's been a long journey, but it does actually get there. So having that perfect lifestyle for a certain period of time and then it disappearing, it was quite difficult for myself personally to effectively rebuild that from scratch. So learning how to deal with being a single parent, going back out and forming new relationships, that whole thing was sort of a massive knock to my self-esteem personally. And I think of a lot of people that will watch this eventually probably suffer the same thing to a certain extent as well.
It can happen to anybody anytime. You can be the top sports hero in the world and then have an accident and lose your foot and you can't perform anymore. Then who and what are you? I mean, that's got to be dramatic if you're self-esteem based. If you're self-esteem based, that's just going to change your whole life for you. If you're not self-esteem based, you're like, wow, you know, I lost that. That is a real loss. I'll have to find something else to do. That'll be painful and difficult, but I can do it. You'll move on much quicker. You'll be much saner in your responses. But if you're self-esteem based and you lose your position, like overnight because of a train accident or a plane accident, you know, you're going to be frantic. You're going to be depressed. You might commit suicide. I mean, self-esteem drives people to suicide all the time.
Yeah, definitely. That's it. Yeah, I mean, there's a huge problem that we've got in the UK. It's actually mainly been highlighted by the suicide of a reality TV star over the weekend, but there's been 2 or 3 of them with one show who are very much suntanned, white teeth, perfect lifestyle, perfect abdomen, and they've gone through and they've been living this Instagram lifestyle of posting pictures saying, I live this wonderful life, X, Y, and Z, but actually underneath that, if the guy in question was failing from an economic perspective, and he mourned a recent death of a close family member, and it shows the picture that some people paint on the outside, which then people are basing their self-esteem on, isn't actually a true reflection of that person in the first place. So there's that whole toxic mix that I think we've got generally in society at the moment, which is a challenge to a lot of people from that side of things as well.
Yeah, self-esteem is a facade. It's a mask. It's a, you know, it's a fantasy. It's a play. You know, you go out and pretend you're somebody, but you're not, because nobody can actually be that thing that you're pretending. I mean, self-esteem is based on concepts and images, right? So if you have this image of yourself as something, let's say a beautiful ballet dancer, and that's your image of yourself, how can that image be a human being? How is that picture a human being? But if you identify with that picture, you've given your identity to that. And now you have to defend that identity. You have to present that identity. You have to do everything you can to cover it and protect it. So that makes you fairly crazy because you are not that image.
Yeah, completely, yes. No, I fully agree, and people's self-esteem's sort of knocked one way or the other so quickly now that you can see someone on a holiday and think, oh, I don't earn enough money and I'll never be able to go and do that, and I'm sitting here trying to feed my children and getting on with the rat race, and then on the other hand they're sitting on a yacht in the Mediterranean enjoying themselves, and why can't my life be like that, and that whole sort of things. And I know a lot of people that suffer a similar sort of fate to that. They absolutely hate scrolling through social media and seeing people on holiday, and then it sort of then ruminating for 2 or 3 days about feeling dumps that they're not in that situation. And it is a true stock of life now, really, from that side of things.
But they're making themselves miserable by that comparison.
Completely.
That other person being on the yacht may be having a miserable life and arguing with their spouse the entire trip. We don't know. They can send a nice pretty picture and they had 5 minutes of pleasure for the whole trip. Who knows? But why are you comparing yourself to them? All that time, all that energy that you spent on that, if you spent on your career or you spent on learning new things, would have improved your life. But that all that worry and pain that you caused yourself by comparing yourself with others did you no good, did them no good, did your family no good, did your career no good, did nothing for anybody, just hurt you. And who did that to you? The people on the yacht? No, they didn't do that to you. That's in your own head, your own mind, your own soul, your own heart. You did that to yourself. There's no one to blame but you.
Yeah, it really closely relates. One of the therapists that I used to use said to me, don't drink another person's poison to make yourself sick, which is basically however much you ruminate and stress about an outside situation that you have no influence on, it's never going to see any self-improvement in your life. That person sitting in the yacht's certainly not going to be sitting there thinking about you, that, oh, he's sitting there down in the dumps. And then that creates a self-fulfilling spiral of, as you say, depression and going downhill from that side of things as well. So it is unbelievable, as we've discussed, how self-esteem can really be the root cause of that from sort of that perspective as well. So.
But if you have unconditional self-esteem, you won't go there. You go, oh, that yacht looks good. Maybe I'll work for it someday. Or that yacht looks good, but that's not what my life's about. I am not going to devote my entire life to a career so I can have a yacht. I'm going to spend more time with my family and friends. I'm going to have a more balanced, full life. I don't need that. That won't make me happy. What'll make me happy is loving my children and spending time with them. you know, you can have a different perspective if you have unconditional self-esteem.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And is there any anything that the viewers could read or reference to in terms of finding more information out about improving this in their sort of day-to-day lives from that perspective?
Well, my website, www.kevinfitzmaurice.com, has free information, and there's also links to a number of my books that would help with those issues. I always address them in my coping books and my self-help books. But unconditional self-esteem, unconditional self-acceptance, and unconditional life acceptance are the three core principles of REBT. Because not only do you need the unconditional self and other acceptance, you need unconditional life acceptance. Because life is what it is. Life is not what you make it or what you want it to be. And if you accept it for what it is, you'll be able to cope with life better too. So you need unconditional life acceptance as well. So the self-esteem is probably the key issue. I really think it is. But unconditional life acceptance really goes hand in hand with what people have problems with.
Brilliant. And I mean, so being a fairly novice to the REBT theology, I did some CBT myself, and I found it to be quite heavy in terms of paperwork, as it were. The doctor, when I was first diagnosed with depression, gave me a 500-page book and said, go off and read this, and hopefully you'll feel better in some period of time. How in practice does REBT sort of help in terms of not only just from a self-esteem perspective, but in terms of the therapy sessions and sort of an overall picture about how it helps from that side as well?
Well, there's counseling out there which still goes on where the counselor is really just a paid friend. Mm-hmm. And you know, they smile at you and you smile at them and they pat you on the back, and at the end you might feel a little better and you might feel you got to know somebody and they got to know you, and that feels good, but it really hasn't solved your problem. In order to solve psychological mental health problems, you really need a philosophical change. You really need to look at why you are where you are, why you're thinking what you're thinking, and what you're doing to get out of that, and what you're doing to keep yourself stuck. So REBT helps you understand your point of view, helps you understand why you think the way you do, and helps you find new ways to do that. And it's very practical, it's very directive, it's very teacher-oriented. It's not just stand by and go, I see. Well, come back next week and tell me more. No, it's very, very much hands-on. It says, okay, on the one hand, you hate your mother, but on the other hand, you love your mother. So you're just going to keep torturing yourself over that, or are you going to resolve that somehow? What are you going to do? Not what's your mother going to do, not what's your family going to do, but how are you going to change your mindset so that you live more peacefully with this conflict that you're causing yourself? Because you can say your mother caused it because she was mean to you and both nice to you when you were a child. Okay, as a child, we can put the blame on the adults, but now you're an adult. So now you're the one doing it to yourself. Now you have to make the changes.
Okay, perfect. That's excellent. Well, I think that concludes our session today, and I want to really thank you so much for being so supportive in our first session for the REBT Facebook group. We've got some of the therapists that are lined up over the next few weeks as well that are going to continue to contribute. I ask all of the viewers of this video to obviously check out Kevin's website, kevinfitzmaurice.com, and also just a little bit about these videos shouldn't replace medication or general therapy sessions, so just see them as a helping hand and stick to doing what you're doing, and we hope even if it improves one person's life, then it'll be a job happily done for me as well. So.
And thank you, Stephen, for doing this and giving back to the community. I think that's really important, and it's noble work. I thank you for it.
Excellent, great. Thank you very much for your time, Kevin.
You bet. Bye for now.
Well, perfect. Thank you very much for that.
You bet.